Welcome to World Air Shows 2000. I'm Sean Maffett, and I'll be your guide through this digest of air shows around the world. We'll cover much of the first century of powered flight, from Loreto to stealth, and we'll travel from Italy to California. We start at Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C., where the weather was not great for display flying. It's actually the Joint Forces Show, and it's the chance for the United States public to see how their tax dollars are spent by their armed forces. This show provides us with a rare opportunity to compare the relative merits of the Air Force Thunderbirds aerobatic team and the Navy's Blue Angels. The Blue Angels leader, Commander Pat Driscoll, told us how the team started shortly after the Second World War.
The team was created after World War II by Admiral Chester Nimitz. He wanted to keep the public aware of the fact that the Navy had an air branch, and as well as a Marine Corps. And so he formed a team, and the first flight leader, Butch Voris, got some Bearcats together and started flying, and they put together the famous diamond formation. And it's evolved since then, flying several different types of aircraft to the present model, now the F-18.
The Blue Angels even include their supporting C-130 aircraft as part of the show. And of course, being naval, their Hercules has jet-assisted takeoff.
The F-18 is a great airplane to fly. I've flown it off the carrier, and I've flown several other aircraft off the aircraft carrier. This is the easiest airplane to fly around the ship. It's a medium-speed fighter as far as a fighter goes. It gives up a little bit on top-end speed for the strike mission, so it's a great strike fighter. Very capable, one of the most maneuverable aircraft in the world, and a great ACM aircraft.
Sad to say, the bad weather stopped the Blue Angels doing their full display, but we will see more of them later in the program. The Thunderbirds didn't fly at all because of the weather, but we did catch up with them at their base in Nevada, and Left Wingman Captain Rick Bootwell looked back over their history.
Thunderbirds been around since 1953. It's our 47th anniversary, and it's a thrill and a privilege to get to do this job with all the great heritage we've had, and the great team members have, and then all that the team has been able to accomplish in that 47-year history. We'll fly up to 18 inches to 3 feet away from each other during the maneuvers, and up to 500 miles an hour in various maneuvers, pulling 5-6 G sometimes in formation that close together. It's like strapping yourself to a rocket. You know, as I was a 6-year-old kid hoping to one day be a pilot, I never thought I'd imagine the day that I would be able to strap myself into this rocket. It's got 25,000 pounds of thrust, so it's kind of the best roller coaster ride you can ever have, because you're getting to charge and tell it which way you want it to go. If you were to take all the cars at the Indianapolis 500 and tie them together and put them in a tug-of-war with the F-16 would win. It has the ability to accelerate going straight up. It has the ability to sustain 9G turns. And when you're looking in a dogfight for survivability, that's very key.
The graduation, we'll be doing a show there on Tuesday. All right, here we go.
Helicopters usually fly whatever the weather, and the pilot of this Chinook, Lieutenant Aaron L. Smith, wanted to extol the virtues of his aircraft.
It absolutely is a very forgiving aircraft. It handles exactly the way you think it's going to. I mean, it's multi-system and very complex, but it flies wonderfully, and aviators that get to fly the Chinook absolutely love it.
Lifting a Humvee from the middle of Andrews Airfield is more difficult than it looks.
Well, it takes a lot of training to do it, but the flight engineer is really, he has the aircraft basically by giving the pilot directions in 1 foot increments. He'll give you 2 directions at a time. He'll tell you forward and down in a certain amount of feet and basically position you right in there. And if you have high winds, it can be very difficult, especially if they're not straight off the nose. But it takes practice, and but it can be done.
But if it's serious long-range airlift you want, this is your aircraft, the C-17 Globemaster III. It can carry just about anything, anywhere. And the thing is, it can manage more or less without ground support equipment. It can airdrop up to 102 paratroops, and practically anything else up to and including the M2 tank. C-17 is especially good on short runways and unprepared strips, and that means that it can use more than 6,000 airfields worldwide that other big aircraft like the C-5 and wide-body airliners can't use. Well, we've had the Air Force and the Navy at this joint air show. Now it's the US Coast Guard's turn with their swimmer rescue by the Eurocopter HH-65A Dauphin, or Dolphin as they call it here. Pilot is Lieutenant Phil Perez.
The US Coast Guard has multiple missions. The H-65 helicopter, its primary mission is for search and rescue and law enforcement and fisheries patrols. We do some migrant operations in the Caribbean, but Atlantic City is mostly involved with the fisheries patrol and the search and rescue. Today we'll be out demonstrating a maritime rescue with utilizing our rescue basket. And we'll have our swimmer, who's simulated by Christopher Owens. He'll be utilizing the basket with a trail line, and he'll be hoisting a survivor on board the helicopter. Some of those search and rescue evolutions normally take about 15 to 20 minutes once we get on scene. And what we do is lower the basket from the helicopter, utilizing a winch capable of lifting about 600 pounds. We bring the survivor aboard. Once they're safely aboard, then we bring our rescue swimmer aboard and then depart to whatever facility is required. We're capable of doing a search and rescue offshore about 150 miles with a 20-minute recovery, then a return to the nearest facility.
Well, here we have the fourth element of the forces at this joint show, the US Marines. And this aircraft, of course, very familiar to British audiences, the Harrier. The Royal Air Force calls it the GR7. But in this guise, it is the AV-8B Harrier II, and it's made by Boeing and BAE these days. Of course, it was originally a McDonnell Douglas BAE joint project, transatlantic jointery in operation. The US Marine Corps is the largest user of the AV-8B aircraft. These marine aircraft are night attack capable. They have a night vision compatible cockpit, and it's got a sizable head-up display. The kind of weapons it can carry, it has a big 25mm GAU equalizer 5-barrel cannon, and that fires at something like 4,200 rounds a minute. Unbelievable. Also carries self-defense AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles, and it can carry up to 12,000 pounds of bombs, rockets or missiles. And amid the encircling gloom, an F-15 leaves for home and waggles its wings in salute. And everyone hopes that next year's Andrews Air Show will get better weather. About 300 miles away in upstate New York, and a world away from modern joint forces, is Old Rhinebeck, and the air show there is directed by Jim Hare.
Well, it's amazing, the story of Old Rhinebeck. It was started by one man named Cole Palin, who had this love of aircraft. And after World War II, he found 6 World War I airplanes stored in a hangar down at Roosevelt Field on Long Island. And he staked his life savings, $1,500 at that time, which doesn't sound like much, but it was a lot, and got those 6 airplanes and moved them to this farm here in Rhinebeck. And he just sort of wanted to have the airplanes for a hobby, really. But word got out that this madman was up here in the Hudson Valley flying these World War I airplanes, and they started to show up, and they've never stopped coming. Weather today looks pretty good. Little north wind, little northwest wind. You pilots.
Jim briefs the pilots, and then Gene DeMarco in the Stump biplane gets the show underway with old Rhinebeck's traditional opener, the ribbon cut. The Rhinebeck shows have wonderful, real aviation history. This beautiful French Henriot dates from 1907. And there are World War I fighters galore. There's also barnstorming fun straight out of Dick Dastardly's diary. One of the stars of the Rhinebeck collection is this Curtiss pusher from the dawn of American aviation.
Well, you really are out in the open, and a lot of the early Pioneer airplanes were like that. They were designed like that because the technology was very, very new then. Oh, this is the airplane you have to land very, very carefully, and you fly it only on very, very calm days. A lot of the early Pioneer pilots did that. When they flew these airplanes, they flew them at, back then, what were county fairs. That was the air show back then. It's a replica machine built in about 1974 by the late Cole Palin. One of the things we like to do at Old Rhinebeck is either find an original part of an airplane or an original engine or something original and work and build around that. In this case, we have an original period engine from 1911-1912. It's a Hall Scott V8 water-cooled engine that puts out about 80 horsepower on a good day. But if you do the math, it's a long time ago, and you'd be a little cranky too if you had to get up and fly every weekend. So it does a pretty good job. It gets off the ground, and a very significant airplane in the early days of aviation. Curtiss pusher to fly this airplane, very exciting. Mainly because if you fly a regular airplane, you're used to a conventional manner of controls. And in this airplane, it's very intuitive. Flying is very intuitive. You don't think about it, you just do it. You make the motion, you make the airplane bank, do what you want to do to the airplane. In this airplane, you do the same thing, but it's the matter of getting there that's a little bit different. And to demonstrate the controls, you'll see it's, again, very intuitive for somebody who's never flown before. But to somebody who's flown on a regular basis, you have to kind of unlearn what you've learned. When Glenn Curtiss first designed this airplane, he knew that a lot of people would probably be coming from the world of automobiles, so he tried to replicate that a little bit. So I have a steering wheel in my hand which operates just like a car. I can steer from left to right, and I have control of the rudder. In my hand, the pitch control, fore and aft, up and down. Pull back, the buildings get smaller. Push forward, the buildings get bigger. In my right foot, it's most like a car. I've got an accelerator pedal. Okay, just full bore, and it's off. Pretty revolutionary for 1911, tricycle landing gear, much like the modern airplanes today, but also brakes, very much unheard of in 1911. Very high tech. I've got a friction brake that grabs the front wheel, adds a little friction to that, and I've got a claw brake that actually just grabs the grass. Now, what I have to do in this airplane is I wear this leather strap behind my neck to add a little extra control. And Glenn Curtiss knew that when you want to make a turn, what do? Well, you turn the wheel, but you also lean in the seat. So when you lean in the seat of a motorcycle, I'm doing the same thing here. If this wing is up, I want to lean this way, and I lean from side to side, and that's operating the small panels in between the wings called ailerons. Aileron's a French word for small wing, and that word has stuck ever since. And those move the panels back and forth. Anything with these airplanes, it's baby steps. You crawl, you walk, and then you run. Hopefully you're not crawling again right after you ran. But you start off very slowly. You start adding power, get the feel, and then once you get more and more power, you get it light on it, maybe feel a little bit, see where you're going. We only hop these the length of the runway because I know the engine's an old engine, and I don't want to push it too much. So being that way, flying at length of the runway, you run out of runway pretty quickly, so you have to start over again. As a kid, I saw the movie The Magnificent Men of Flying Machines. that was a real spark plug for me. I saw the film, there was a couple of airplanes in there, I just fell in love with that old Edwardian era design. It seemed very, very basic. And because of that, when I came to the aerodrome back in 1969 with my parents, like many people here did, wow, this was just, here it is, it's all happening in front of me, this is exciting.
Rhinebeck has a magnificent collection of First World War aeroplanes. Some people would say that the best of them is this British Sopwith Camel.
The Camel is quite unique. It has a 160 gnome rotary engine. The whole engine turns with the propeller, as you know. And because of that, it has quite a few unique handling characteristics. One of them is the airplane turns quite readily to the right. It dives when it turns to the right and climbs when it turns to the left, which was could be used to its advantage, but it was also quite a surprise for many novice pilots when they transitioned from the Avro 504 as a trainer to the Sopwith Camel. It's one of the more difficult airplanes to fly. It has no brakes, no steerable tail gear. It's got a tail skid. Not much of a throttle. The engine's throttled with the ignition system. You could either cut the ignition off completely or run it on the selector magneto, which runs full speed, quarter speed, half speed, and eighth speed. It works on a gear-driven selector that has insulated portions of it corresponding to the amount of ignition you want to cut out, whether it's half the ignition, quarter of it, or most of it. Because of the odd number of cylinders and the even ratios, it cuts out different cylinders each time. So it doesn't load up any of them, it doesn't foul the spark plugs. It's fun to fly. They all have a personality, but this one is by far the most popular and really just a nice flying airplane. It uses castor oil for a lubricant. The castor oil is pumped in. It has a separate reservoir, a separate tank, and it's a total loss oil system. The oil just drains out of the engine. It's spewed out as the engine rotates, and it covers just about every part of the airplane, the pilot, and everywhere.
Part of the show is a dogfight between real wartime enemies, the Camel and a German Albatros D5. These aeroplanes were often to be seen fighting over the trenches in the last months of the Great War. When the Camel arrived in service in 1917, it quickly asserted its superiority over aeroplanes like the Albatros, because that had something of a structural weakness in its lower wing. The Camel was highly manoeuvrable. Two 303 machine guns fired forwards through the propeller, and they were fitted with an interrupter gear to stop them hitting the blades. Camel got its name because of its humpy look, where the streamlined fairing fits over the machine guns. Jean DeMarco also flies the Newport 28.
The Newport was quite an early design. It came out in 1913 or so. It wasn't really designed as a fighter. It was designed as a racer. They fitted a machine gun to the upper wing because they didn't have an interrupter gear. They couldn't fire through the propeller like the Camel does. It has a V-strut, a sesquiplane arrangement. There's a single spar lower wing with a strut that's in the shape of a V to the double spar upper wing. Quite a bit weaker in design than the Camel. It uses just ailerons on the upper wing as opposed to 4 ailerons here. It's quite a bit slower, a lot less maneuverable, and quite a bit more fragile than this airplane. When you look at the progression of flight, I mean, 1903 they were flying the first airplanes, and by 1918 they had a real effective fighter, such as the Camel.
Europe also has great claim to early aviation history, and it's regularly remembered at the Amicale Jean-Baptiste Salis at La Ferte Alais in France. The show virtually spans the history of powered flight, from this Caudron, which actually predates the First World War, and this Morane-Saulnier AI fighter with its elegant parasol wing, which was a late entrant into the war. Then there's the Breguet 14 bomber, in service for 10 years, from 1916. And the Blériot 11, developed from the aeroplane in which Louis Blériot famously crossed the Channel in 1909. It became a scout aeroplane for French, British and Italian squadrons at the start of the war. French design has always been individual, distinctive, and the selection of light aircraft at the show does nothing to disprove that, with an extraordinary array of wing and tailplane shapes and configurations. France is known for its flying firefighters. They're all part of the Sécurité Civile, and they're usually so busy in the summer that you don't often see them at air shows. But La Ferte Alais is once again the exception that proves the rule. This Firecat is an updated version of the Grumman Tracker anti-submarine aircraft, with turboprops instead of the Tracker's piston engines. It can drop 3,500 litres of water or fire suppressant from its 3 tanks. Its bigger sister can carry nearly twice the quantity in its tanks. This is the Canadair CL415. The crews call it the Pelican, and it's actually an amphibian, so it can operate from water or land. You can see the retracted wheels on the side and the floats on the wingtips. And there's more than 6,000 litres of water going down on the flames there. La Ferte Alais is a family day out, not just a show for aviation fanatics. Amongst the barnstorming bits, this Boeing Stearman and its wing walker, or indeed its wing sitter. To say nothing of a rerun of a First World War air battle, complete with bombs and smoke, and French commando parachutists with their own explosions and gunfire. But in our history of aviation, we're up to the 1940s and 50s now, and this Vought Corsair is a rare bird because it's the only one with its original French Navy markings. They found it in Argentina in 1994, and they finished a great restoration job just before the show. It's flown by Corsair veteran Ramon Josa. The other 2 Corsairs in this beautiful formation are in US Navy colours. Corsair was highly successful. More than 12,500 of them were built, and they were still in use in the 1960s. Corsair displaying its tail hook here for carrier landings, and the aircraft that took over from it in the French Navy was the Dassault Étendard. This is actually the Super Étendard, and there's its tail hook. The 2 versions of Étendard, and that name means standard, or ensign by the way, they've served in the French Navy since the 60s until retiring from service this year. So this magnificent formation of Corsairs and Super Étendard represents more than half a century of French naval aviation. Formidable! This is the Dassault Flamand, nothing to do with flames or flaming, the name means flamingo. Not perhaps the most exciting aircraft you've ever seen, but very significant in French eyes, and anyway possessed of a certain French je ne sais quoi. See, Max Bloch, who designed it, had been in a concentration camp in the war, and meanwhile his brother had been in the French resistance, and he used the code name Dassault. When the war ended, Bloch changed his name to Dassault, and Flamand was the first product of the new company called Dassault. So the Flamand epitomizes the rebirth of French aviation and also the spirit of La Résistance. And this elegant formation is a moving reminder of those past French glories. Flamands served in the Armée de l'Air, the French Air Force, as navigation and bombing trainers until 1985. And of course Dassault went from strength to strength, as we shall see later. Now this is a Pache. Sad to say, this is all that's left of the 4 aircraft of the brilliant Patrouille Adecco. Adecco withdrew the sponsorship, and leader Jacques Bautelin could only manage to keep the 2 aircraft going. But they're still brilliant as a duo in their Pilatus PC-7 turbo trainers. And more very tight formation, this time from the military. This is Voltige Victor, Victor Aerobatics. They're from the 333 Squadron at Rheims, where the champagne comes from. And their aircraft are Mirage F1s, a bastion of France's air defence capabilities since the 1970s. 333 is the Escadron de Chasse Fighter Squadron Lorraine, hence the Cross of Lorraine in the elegant colour scheme of the leader, Captain Stéphane Thomas. His unshakable, almost welded-on wingman is Lieutenant Guillaume Paul. Closing the Millennium Show at La Ferte Alais and bringing us right up to date all the way from those early days of the 20th century is the chronologically apt Mirage 2000. It's another world beater from that Dassault stable. For Captain Alain Personnat, the Millennium Mirage 2000 display pilot, it's just the best.
Every pilot who have flown it will talk about it the same way I do. It's easy, it's safe, and it's very, very pleasant. In France, we had several RAF pilots, and we had several US guys flying the Mirage for 2 years, and at the same time, we have French pilots sent in England and in USA, and even F-16 or F-15 guys enjoyed very much their time on the Mirage. Using the plane so close from the ground is something very exciting, and the plane, you could feel that the plane makes it very easily. It's very safe. La Ferte Alais is a place, it's a kind of magic.
Many people would call this the greatest air show in the world. It's end of July at Oshkosh, Wisconsin. You and I probably know it just as Oshkosh, but it's actually the annual 7-day showcase of the Experimental Aircraft Association, and it's called Air Venture 2000. The theme of the 2000 show is speed, and that applies to the big home-build section of the EAA as well as anywhere else.
Well, it's all wood, it's fast, it's pretty, it's fun to work with, fun to build.
Actually 5 years of fun and hard work too.
Oh, well, it is. It's just one little piece at a time, just lots of elbow grease and try to get it smooth.
Now, although lots of home-built aircraft are made out of composites these days, the decision to work with wood was a simple one for Dave.
Well, I've worked with wood all my life. My uncles were cabinet makers, and I've been a builder for 25 years building houses, so wood is what I like to work with. I've got plenty of clamps, plenty of glue, and it takes hundreds of clamps for this to do it right, and so it smells nice, it's easy to work with, you don't have to wear masks or anything you do for all the epoxy stuff, but the wood is just, it's fun to be around. It's in a dying art, woody.
And that wood looks every bit as shiny and shapely as its composite counterparts. But the looks aren't just skin deep. The Falco is known as the Ferrari of the air, and it's even painted bright red. So how does it handle?
It's got a lot of gross weight. I mean, it really can handle quite a bit. I have the bigger engine, the 180, so I've got a little bit more performance takeoff and speed. It's the climb performance and getting off the runway that really is the difference.
Dave says he gets more than 230 miles an hour out of this beautiful little bird, which is entirely in keeping with this year's theme of speed. But he knows he's outclassed by the big guns of the racing scene here at Oshkosh. They're all here, from golden racers to Reno racers. Amongst the big guys of the unlimited racing world, a strange tale about a big crank-wing Corsair.
It's an ex-Cleveland Unlimited Air Racer that did quite well in the last year they had it, which is 1949. And we found it derelict in a barn and decided to put it back together in its glory days when it raced.
So when you've got your big bad aeroplane fully restored, glossily painted and tuned and tweaked to perfection with a top speed of about 450 miles an hour, what's next? At Oshkosh, these unlimited racers are competing just for fun. That's not always the case. In the real races, they compete to win, and you can see why. At Reno, the prize purse is worth $750,000. But as ever, you have to spend money to win money, and there's lots of hard work involved, including plain old elbow grease.
We had it down about as far as you could tear it apart, and just started with all the small pieces that were metal and plated them and blasted and cleaned everything and built everything back up and put everything back together.
Bob Odegaard even restored the Corsair to its original colour scheme. And then there's the propeller. There's something rather strange about it, something not quite normal.
Put the one white blade on it like it had, which gives you a true realization of how fast the propeller is spinning, which a lot of people think, well, the faster you spin it, it must go better, but that's not true. You normally want to slow down, especially a big propeller, you want to slow it down, and this will actually show you how fast it's turning.
It took about 4 years to restore this 1940s unlimited racer back to winning condition.
My greatest reward in this whole thing is to have other people see it, especially the people that saw it race in '49.
It was the first time at Oshkosh for number 57, and also for Dave McGawley's aeroplane, which is at the diametrically opposite end of practically any scale you care to think of. But Dave's a man with a mission.
Now, whilst I was thinking of this, a friend of mine died of a brain tumour in Britain, and one of the last things he said to me is, don't keep waiting to do it now, because he knew he was dying.
Dave McGawley quit his job and left his wife of 6 weeks at home. But when he arrived in the US...
Got to Houston, went to bed that night, and my machine was almost totally destroyed by a tornado. So then it was either the option to either go home with the pieces or try to rebuild it here.
He did get his ultralight back together here, and the fundraising goes on. But he does admit to another motive for his madness.
And also I'm in a midlife crisis, so I want to do it now instead of later when I'm too old.
AirVenture 2000 was the 48th annual gathering of the EAA, and a staggering 765,000 people came during the 7 days. At 2 o'clock each day, most of them were at the air show. But not everything went at breakneck speed. This glorious old lady made her stately way at 170 miles an hour. In her time, she carried 21 passengers and 3 crew, and she took a day to cross the States. She is a DC-3 Delta ship number 41.
The airplane's been totally restored, and when we say restored, for instance, they not only just took the wings off, they took the wings totally apart and didn't just reskin them, but they reworked and the whole airplane is that way. The airplane's been totally redone everywhere.
At various times during the 3.5-year restoration process, they ran out of money, they ran out of people, and they ran out of time. But they never ran away from their dream. It was truly a labour of love, and they finished up with something that was not just an immaculate piece of shining aeronautica. What they got was a journey back in time.
It was laid back, and you'd land somewhere and you'd be on the ground 10 minutes and unload passengers, leave one engine running, and somebody'd bring you a hamburger or run up and give it to you, or you'd jump off and run in, they'd have your breakfast made for you, and you'd eat all this within 10 minutes maybe.
As Ed Bolin says, it was just a neat time to be flying. Less neat, perhaps more exciting, terrifying, frequently fatal, was the era of these machines, the ever-popular warbirds. There were an unbelievable 384 of them at AirVenture 2000. Now, looking at the name, do you think this shape is evidence that irony does exist in the USA after all? Anyway, Tinkerbell was at the show for a particular purpose. Historically, C-46s were cargo carriers in the early days of the various crises in Southeast Asia. Air America used them on humanitarian duties, carrying refugees and the like. At AirVenture 2000, Tinkerbell became a walk-through museum exhibit, but her other task was to drop the Liberty parachutists. Now bang up to date with the International Space Station. 16 nations are collaborating to build the biggest civil engineering project there's ever been. And its object? The long-term exploration of space and corresponding benefits on Earth. As well as its living accommodation, the space station will have 6 laboratories. It'll allow more research area than any space vehicle before. So NASA needs a rather large aircraft to transport those huge space station bits around the world. Step forward the amazing Super Guppy.
You're in the world's fattest airplane right now. The fuselage is 25 feet in diameter for about 32 feet, so it's a pretty darn big airplane. There's nothing, the only airplane that equals it is the Beluga, the replacement aircraft for this.
Super Guppy pilot Frank Marlowe. Now, the Super Guppy can carry a payload of 50,000 pounds, so it needs some super powerful engines.
The same engines that are on the P3 and C-130, the modern engines, except we have the addition of water injection, water methanol, to keep the power the same at higher temperatures. It flies very nicely, very conventionally. It's a very clean airplane. I think maybe this, if you look at the way the fuselage is designed, it might be something like an atomic submarine, and they go pretty fast in the water. So this is a very clean airplane. There's nothing hydraulic about it. It's all standard controls, just like the little airplanes you have around here.
At 25,000 feet, the Super Guppy cruises at 290 miles an hour. This is the only one in the USA. So, probably the most extraordinary aircraft in the States rounds off what is clearly the longest air show on the US circuit. So long, Oshkosh. Now, where else could this be but Italy? Inside this basilica is the shrine of the Madonna di Loreto, and she is the patron saint of aviators. Now, this air show is actually at Porto Recanati on the Adriatic coast of Italy, and it's called Alais per la Vita, Wings for Life. It's dedicated to the Madonna of Loreto. It's one of the overseas shows that the British Red Arrows go to, but on this occasion they're one aircraft short because of unserviceability. So this opening flypast in 9-arrow formation is really 8-arrow. They actually don't have any replacement pilots on the team because they consider that each pilot's job is individual and it's not practical to have somebody trained to fulfill any of the other places. So when they're one person short, they usually fly with one aircraft short. Nonetheless, the formation still looks pretty good as an 8. This is a formation shape that would be called Big Vixen if they had 9 of them. It's Big Vixen in 8 shape. Vixen after the famous naval jet fighter, the Sea Vixen. The red hawks gleaming in the sunlight. Beautifully turned out. And the arrow on the underside. Synchro lead now, Flight Lieutenant Dicky Petunas heading towards the rest of the formation in a sort of tunnel shape. They rather rudely call that manoeuvre the goose. And now the other half of the synchro pair, Flight Lieutenant Jim Provost, joins Dicky Petunas, and together they paint this amazing heart shape in the sky. The Italians being romantics, and we love it. This you would expect to have some very exotic name. They just call it a vertical split. You might call it a parasol or a palm tree or something. Mirror formation from the synchro pair now, Dicky Petunas and Jim Provost. This would normally be the 5-4 split. It's actually 5-3, and the aircraft on our left in that group of 5 call themselves Enid, after Enid Blyton's famous 5. As they come together, they cross over in the middle of the display area. Very exotic. Enid coming in against the backdrop of the mountains for rollbacks. The home team now, the Piaggio P166 of the Guardia Costiera, the Coast Guard. And he drops a sonobuoy on the underside of the aircraft, splashes down into the water, and is able to detect underwater sounds. Like homing pusher propellers on the back of the wings there instead of on the front on this little Piaggio, and the big chin-mounted radar. Another aircraft belonging to the Italian government, the ATR-42 airliner. This is the military version, making it an ATM-42, used by Italian customs for surveillance on smugglers. You can see the television camera on its right-hand side there, the radome underneath, and the electronic support measures pod on the left. They have a big problem with smugglers, particularly on cigarettes. The distribution of cigarettes actually controlled by the Italian state. So this is the Italian VAT man at work. Kind of puts a new complexion on the VAT inspection that we get in this country. These two call themselves Yak Italia, led by Carlo Marinari These are two Yak-52s, a basic military trainer, but now in plenty of civilian use, really all over the world. A very tough aeroplane, this. Some would almost describe it as agricultural. And a big Ivchenko 9-cylinder radial engine, 360 horsepower, that develops quite a lot. And notice the way the undercarriage doesn't fully retract. Quite helpful, that, because it means that if you have an undercarriage problem, you can still put the thing down on those wheels without having to get the undercarriage fully down. And if you're clever enough to motor the two-blade propeller around to the right place, you won't damage anything when you do it. It's a two-seat aircraft. One pilot sits behind the other. When you're flying it by yourself, you sit in the front cockpit, which isn't always the way with two seats in tandem. And here's the tiny Pitts Special. This is also a two-seater, surprisingly, but it really is a tiny little aeroplane. It's 17'4" wingspan, about the size of an estate car. It only weighs 1,000 pounds, less than a Mini, but amazingly aerobatic, designed in 1942 by Curtis Pitts, specifically for aerobatic competitions. Well, now, in case any of these aeroplanes should fall in the drink, we've got the rescuers here from the Air Force, the Aeronautica Militare, the HH-3. They call it the Pelican, and it's their search and rescue helicopter. It's really a sort of Sea King, but it's got that big radar dome on the nose. Huge rotor, that, 62 feet in diameter, not far short of a cricket pitch. Still a very manoeuvrable helicopter, despite being able to carry about 3 tons of payload. Now we're going to see a rescue demonstration. See a swimmer jump into the sea. No ropes here for him, just jump straight in. Wasn't even holding his nose as far as I could see. And now they're lowering the strop down to him. He's having to swim to it. See all that water blowing away as the rotor downdraft hits around him. He's got the strop around him. He's holding onto that ring, signing that he's ready to go up. And there he goes, flippers and all. Well, we'll round off our look at the show at Loreto with a brief glimpse of the Breitling Eagles. We shall see more of them later. But here they are in their 4 Sukhois, 1 single-seat Su-26 and 3 twin-seat Su-29s. Amazing aerobatic aeroplanes, these. With a little non-retractable undercarriage, sprung titanium, that is, all very light. And a huge 360 horsepower engine producing an incredible power-to-weight ratio, which is one of the reasons why this is such a world-beating aerobatic aeroplane. Formation led by Gianbattista Molinaro, known as GB to his friends. And there, the split of the finale grande of the Breitling Eagles. Now, you'll have been very lucky to have seen this show. It's a rare event, a private show by the Breitling fighters at the little airfield of Yverdon in the Swiss Alps. And what a setting for some fabulous warbird flying. Ray Hanna leads the whole caboodle. He's in the P-40 Kitty Hawk. The Mustang, the P-51, is flown by Nigel Lamb. And the big Corsair with the radial engine is flown by Cliff Spink. And the 4th member of the Spitfire is flown by Lee Proudfoot. And making up the gathering, a very unusual camera ship, the OV-10 Bronco. Unusual but highly successful. Now, the P-40 Kitty Hawks were the United States Army Air Force's primary fighters at the time of Pearl Harbor in 1941. But those P-40s were being wiped out by Japanese Zeros. The Corsair changed all of that when it arrived in the Pacific War theatre. The P-51 Mustang was one of the most successful fighters of the war. It had the agility of the Spitfire, but it also had the range to escort American bombers all the way to Berlin. Immaculate close formation of these four amazing warbirds. And the Spitfire, one of the two aircraft that saved the Battle of Britain along with the Hurricane. I think if Ray put the P-40's wheels down here, he'd practically have landed. And what an absolutely wonderful collection of aircraft in an amazingly atmospheric setting. It's always nice to go to a birthday party. The Italian aerobatic team, the Frecce Tricolori, invited display teams from all over Europe to their base at Rivolto in northern Italy to help them celebrate their 40th birthday. First up was the French team, the Patrouille de France. Lieutenant Colonel Claude Saget is the display team's director for the French Air Force. He told us how the Patrouille came by their name.
It started in 1953, just by chance, because at this moment the French Air Force sent every weekend some aircraft here and there were 4 F-84G displaying in Algeria, and the commentator, after probably having seen American aircraft, British aircraft, Italians as well, said, well, now here comes the Patrouille de France. So we've kept this name since 1953.
Patrouille get airborne in their beautifully painted little Alpha jets. twin-engined advanced trainer aircraft. As they come towards us with their high wings, looking a bit like dolphins or flying fish perhaps. Dense red, white and blue smoke in the French colours. Eight in this team, rather than the more usual 9. But the French always do things differently. And there, L'Armée de l'Air written on the underside of the wings, the Air Force. A very Gallic manoeuvre here. All of them eventually upside down, except the leader, Commandant Dominique Perrier. And a languorous upward break. How graceful. But even this aeroplane's best friend could hardly call it graceful. This is the amazing Saab J-35 Draken. Made in Sweden, but this one belongs to the Austrian Air Force. Number 2 Squadron, Austrian Fighter Wing at Graz. An extraordinary aeroplane, this. Saab of Sweden's always been innovative. This aircraft is a prime example. Designed as long ago as 1949. And a special colour scheme for the 1000th anniversary of the founding of the state of Austria. And there's strange letters on the top read Österrike, which is the old name for the country. Following that ancient warrior, a rather more up-to-date aircraft, the F-16. This one only first flew in 1974. And this belongs to the Royal Netherlands Air Force, Captain Robert Bosch, known as Woods to his friends. Belongs to number 315 Squadron of the Royal Netherlands Air Force at Twente. £25,000 of thrust coming out of that Pratt & Whitney engine in full reheat. Outstandingly successful fighter is the F-16. Tornado now from the German Navy. From Naval Air Wing number 2 at Eggebek. 15,000 pounds of thrust from each of those big engines, and a good view of the low-speed devices, the flaps on the back of the wing and the droops on the leading edge of the wing. Captain Lieutenant Volker Wewitzer is the man in the front seat, Captain Lieutenant Frank Reimers in the back seat. Tornado doesn't need a braking parachute because, unlike most jet bombers, it has reverse thrust. And this is the future. This is Eurofighter. It was originally called Eurofighter 2000, but that was in the days when we thought we were going to have some of these aircraft in production by this year. Of course we don't. We actually have 7 development aircraft. This is DA5, one of the 2 aircraft that Germany have. So it's now called Eurofighter Typhoon. This is, though, an amazing joint project between Germany, Italy, Spain and the United Kingdom. And each of those nations has some of the development aircraft. Smoke streaming from the smoke winders. Those are in the positions where the short-range air-to-air missiles would be. A good view of that canard wing keeping the aircraft stable in pitch and in roll. This is of course a fly-by-wire aircraft, which is what allows it to make this very high angle of attack slow fly past and still remain within the performance envelope of the aeroplane. You can tell it's high angle of attack from the way the smoke is streaming upwards from the trailing edge of the wing. And in contrast, this aeroplane flew 37 years ago. Flygvapnet, as it says on the top wing. That means it's the Swedish Air Force. And this is Team 60, because this is what the Swedes call the SK-60 aircraft. Designed by Saab, it's a private venture, a side-by-side trainer, light multi-role aircraft. This is their national display team, although it's quite an underpowered little aeroplane. A mere 3,000 pounds of thrust from each of its two engines. They do a nice job in their formation aerobatics. Swedish crowns on the side there. Interesting layout inside these aircraft. If it's being used as a trainer, it has two ejection seats side by side, but you can take the ejection seats out and have 4 seats in there for a pilot and 3 passengers. Now here's a very elegant little team. This is Team Águila from the Spanish Air Force. Águila means eagle. And these are their very nicely painted Casa 101 Aviajets. An advanced trainer, something like the Hawk, dates from about 1977. Not as fast as the Hawk though. But nonetheless a good aeroplane to do displays in. Painted in the Spanish national colours. Coming over the top of the loop in Cunha, wedge formation under the command of Major Francisco Fernandez. Hornet formation there. And is this wheels up or wheels down? The solo, Captain Francisco Moreno, and he does a complete roll from upside down to upside down. And the final break, isn't that exotic? And now the elegant Patrouille Suisse. Their commentator is Captain Aldo Wiki. He told us some of their team history.
Patrouille Suisse performed officially for the first time in '64, and since then the Patrouille was flying on the Hawker Hunter, changing to the F5 Tiger in '95. Changing from the Hunter, it was above all the question of having any future at all, and we had 2 options: the British Aerospace Hawk. The Red Arrows are already flying the Hawk, so the decision was just left to the F5 Tiger. And the Tiger is an excellent performer, not only as a combat aircraft but also as a display aircraft.
Well, he's right, it is an absolutely gorgeous aeroplane. It looks like something out of the Thunderbirds, doesn't it? There is a slight snag, because it's got these short stubby little wings and it's actually quite an old aeroplane. It doesn't turn all that well, so it's not the ideal aeroplane for formation aerobatics. But nonetheless, they fly it so well that you'd never know it wasn't the best aeroplane in the world to do formation aerobatics in. Going over the top of a loop in Diamant formation, Diamond, just plain box 4. And the solo, Hauptmann Daniel Stempfli, heading towards his opposite number, Hauptmann Daniel Siegenthaler.
Velocità di circa 460 km.
Two of them absolutely rock solid, close formation, wheels down. And the formation here, Delta, as they run up to their final break. There they go. Precision. And while we wait for the birthday boys, the Frecce Tricolori, to take the stage, here's a brief glimpse of another Italian participant, the AMX, from the Rivolto Sperimentale Volo, the Experimental Flight Test Centre. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. The home team, the birthday boys, take to the runway, the Frecce Tricolori celebrating their 40th anniversary. An immaculate formation takeoff. Now this team has 10 members, that's quite unusual, so there are 2 formations of 5 here, quickly joining into one group. Now there they are in triangle formation. You can only do this with 10 aircraft. Tenente Colonnello Maurizio Di Rinaldi's leading the formation. Crossover coming up. Now they've dropped off the solo, Captain Dimitri Marzaroli, and now they're in a 9 in the diamond shape that the red arrows favour. These guys are even closer.
Di tutti I gregari della formazione, il distacco delle sue sezioni che vanno su verso l'alto.
Now the solo, Captain Marzaroli, doing something that's very difficult to do in a jet aircraft, a manoeuvre called a Lomshevak. He's tumbling the aircraft end over end and falling back down into his own smoke trail. Quite extraordinary. Demonstrating the manoeuvrability of the Aermacchi MB339 aircraft. Big, wide rollbacks here in the Italian national colours. We'll see more of those. As the 9 start a slow flyby, Captain Marzaroli flashes past and up through the middle. And the 9 present in front of us the biggest Italian flag in the world, red, white and green. Italian hearts are swelling with pride. I have to say, on their day, on their home ground, they are undoubtedly the best in the world. Well, follow that. Nothing could, surely. So that rounds off our coverage at Rivolto. Now Lausanne in Switzerland, and the show was to celebrate the opening of the airfield's first concrete runway. Well, we heard from Aldo Wiki earlier that the Patrouilles Suisses are not always allowed to perform at all Swiss venues because there are sometimes noise restrictions. Lausanne is one of those places, so instead of the Patrouilles Suisses, we have their so-called junior team. This is their team of 9 PC-7 turbo trainers. Some of these pilots will actually go on to fly in the F5s of the real Patrouilles Suisses. But they're very good at this. They call themselves the juniors, but I think they're very good. The Swiss are very proud of the PC-7. It's built by Pilatus in Switzerland, and it's been a major success as a turbine-powered basic trainer all over the world. And in fact, perhaps the pinnacle of their success came when the development of this aircraft, the PC-9, was sold to the Americans for the Joint Primary Aircraft Training System. It was also a contender for the Royal Air Force trainer to take over from the Jet Provost, but the Short Tucano won that, and there are suspicions that there was some political influence in that decision. Mirror formation from 2 PC-7s here. And they're pretty close. First of these aircraft flew in August 1978. Now a strange beast that we saw being used as a camera ship at Yverdon. This is the OV-10 Bronco, made in the mid-60s by North American Rockwell. Used for armed reconnaissance, but probably its most significant use was for forward air control. Two Garrett turboprops, and as we see, very maneuverable, and that little cone on the back there. When it was in use as our camera ship, we saw it completely without that back door. Sold to various other countries: Germany, Indonesia, Morocco, Thailand and Venezuela. This one in German Air Force markings. Now, stand by for some absolutely amazing aerobatics from the 1994 World Aerobatic Champion, Xavier de Lapparent. This is the Sukhoi Su-26, an altogether unbelievable combination.
I fly the 26 for 2 years now, with 4 more years of Sukhoi 31 before, which is very similar. But this one is the best aerobatic airplane of the world.
How does he do it? A totally stunning display by the Breitling display pilot, Xavier de Lapparent, a very popular man on the European display circuit. Now after that, this may not look particularly exciting, but this aircraft won a prize at the Royal International Air Tattoo in England this year for the excellence of its display. It is the Swiss Air Force Super Puma helicopter, made by Eurocopter. And Eurocopter are very keen to point out that the competition for this aircraft is the American Black Hawk, but they've sold this to 28 Air Forces, whereas the Black Hawk has only gone to 18. So this is no mean mover, this big helicopter, developed from the Puma, which has been around for quite some time. The Swiss mainly use this for humanitarian purposes. Now, one of the highlights of the show at Lausanne, a performance by the Breitling Eagles and their amazing Sukhois. And you can see a camera at the back of the fuselage of this aircraft. We shall be seeing some shots from that later. Here's the solo, Angelo Boscolo. We shall be seeing him at close range during the display. 3 of these aircraft are the 2-seat Su-29s, and 1 is the single-seat Su-26. Twin-seat version, you fly it when you're alone from the back cockpit. And windows all round at the side there, you can see, so that the pilot can see out in almost any direction. You can also see through the floor. It's a course, these guys don't really mind which way up they are, and frequently they're not the same way up for a very long length of time either. The sprung titanium undercarriage, bouncing the aeroplane into the air. Big spades underneath the wings, those are the counterbalance weights for the ailerons. That's what gives these aircraft the amazing rate of roll. There it is. That's the solo Angelo Boscolo, and he's in the Su-26 single-seater, and that thing can roll at 400 degrees per second. That's all the way round, plus a bit, in just a second. The two-seaters aren't quite so manoeuvrable, they can only do just one complete roll in a second. These aircraft are amazingly tough. They can stand up to plus or minus 10 G, so that when they're pulling hard, the pilot and the aircraft weigh 10 times their normal weight. Now, when they're not having fun like this, all of these pilots have day jobs. They're all airline pilots. Time was when they all used to fly for the Frecce Tricolori, the Italian aerobatic team. So they decided that they'd really like to get together and fly as a display team again, hence this expertise in the Breitling Eagles. Smoke made by injecting diesel oil into the hot exhaust gases. Feeling for the ground there, touching the wheels down beautifully, all three at once, the perfect three-point landing. Little bit of a bounce there. There we have it, the Breitling Eagles. Our final show comes from California, to be precise, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. That's the home of the 3rd Marine Air Wing, and that's the biggest air wing in the US Marines. We start with an aeroplane that during the Korean War was definitely the enemy. Some experts think that no other combat aircraft in history had quite the same effect on the world scene as the MiG-15. Now, these are actually MiG-17s, but they're quite closely related to the 15. The Soviet Union kept the original MiG very secret until it appeared in the skies over Korea, and the Americans were very surprised to find that their F-8 shooting stars were completely eclipsed by this aeroplane with its swept wings. And the difference between the aircraft is that the MiG-17, these aircraft, have 10 degrees more sweep back than the MiG-15 did. But the arrival of these aircraft over Korea spurred the United States industry to get their F-86 Sabres into production, because the F-86 had actually started its production before the MiG. We shall see an F-86 later with our Korea tribute. But here, a very unusual formation of two MiG-17s in mirror. Very elegant. Characteristic huge tail fin. And here are C-130 Hercules coming into land. We see these at most military air shows the world over, but this one actually is a Marine Hercules, and it's going to do a display, or take part in a display later on, of a Marine air-to-ground intervention. Just to show there's no ill feeling, there is the Marine's Jolly Roger. Now here is something of an altogether different degree of viciousness. This comes from the Air Force, and it is the B-1 Lancer, a big supersonic bomber. The crews love this aircraft. They say it's the best, it has the heaviest bomb load, and it's the fastest. It can even outrun the F-16. Swing wing bomber. The wings are fully forward at the moment. And here for a fast fly past at about 600 knots, the wings fully swept back with 67.5 degrees of sweep back. The condensation flashing, showing a certain amount of moisture in the air. Now the wings have come forward again, that's 15 degrees of sweep back, while the crew get the wheels down, preparatory to landing. This aircraft can carry the new JDAMs, the Joint Direct Attack Missiles. It has 3 huge weapons bays inside. Or it can carry 84,500 pounds of conventional bombs. Well, from cutting-edge offensive to the Korean War 50 years ago. It started in 1950, and this is a tribute to some of the aircraft that fought in that war. Corsair, left over from the Second World War. The F-86 Sabre, the one that was rushed into production to counter those MiGs that we saw earlier. The Bearcat, the ultimate piston engine fighter. So a lovely formation of 2 Mustangs, Corsair, Bearcat, behind it the twin engine Tiger Cat and the jet F-86 Sabre. The start of a simulated raid. Tiger Cat originally built for the Marines. Corsair with its fuel tanks underneath. Now this aircraft, the Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, the A-10 to give it its proper name, is quite closely linked to those aircraft that took part in the Korean War, because one thing they discovered after the Korean War was that those aircraft which were really fighters were not that good at doing ground attack, and what they needed was something that would carry a heavy load and could survive severe ground fire. It was especially needed in Europe to face the high number of Warsaw-packed tanks, so they developed the A-10. And here it is in an Air Force Legacy flypast with 2 Mustangs. Two big General Electric turbofans mounted high on the back of the fuselage, specially developed for this aircraft. Quiet engines and virtually smokeless. Now, nobody could call the Warthog pretty, but this is one of the most elegant aeroplanes there's ever been. This is the Hawker Hunter. Actually a 2-seat version, the T7 Trainer, flown by Steve Appleton, and painted in this very bright red colour, I'm sure to commemorate that day in 1953 when an F3 Hunter gained the world speed record of 727.6 miles an hour in the hands of Neville Duke. A real pilot's aeroplane, the Hunter. And strangely enough, this aircraft is a pilot's aeroplane as well, despite its ungainly appearance and the fact that with all these straight lines and slab sides, it's actually aerodynamically not very efficient. All the computers inside it make it as easy to fly as a Hawk. And that comes from the mouth of one of the RAF exchange officers who flies these aircraft, who has plenty of experience of flying the Hawk. This is, of course, the stealth fighter, the F-117A, the Nighthawk, the world's first operational aircraft to exploit what they call low observable stealth technology. And in fact, it's only stealthy from some direction, so when you're planning an attack, you have to make sure that it's never pointing in its vulnerable direction to the enemy radars. Well, nothing stealthy about what comes next. This is the start of the MAGTAF, the Marine Air Ground Task Force demonstration. Two F-18s that will be providing support for the ground forces during the demonstration. The Marines say that MAGTAFs are unique, combined arms, self-sustaining forces, and they're organised to accomplish specific missions. F-18s peeling off to soften the place up for the ground troops. And here come the ground troops in their big CH-46C Knight helicopters, some Huey helicopters there, and also the Huey Cobra gunship. The gunship always there in close support, the big gun sticking out at the front. Abseiling down onto the ground. Mind your head down below. More softening up from the F-18s. You need to be carted round the battlefield, this is the way to go. And the members of each MAGTAF train together, they deploy together, they respond to crises together, and when they're called upon, they fight together. Well, we've seen the F-18 in its role as a softener-upperer for the MAGTAF. These guys do their softening up in a totally different way. These are the Blue Angels, the Navy's demonstration aerobatic team. And they use the FA-18 fighter to its full aerobatic capabilities. Rock solid, tight formation. When they're in these tight formations, they claim to be no more than an unbelievable 18 inches apart. In display terminology, when people are flying by with their undercarriage down, their flaps down, they're referred to as flying by dirty. Here it is even more dirty because you can see the great big air brakes at the back of the fuselage of the F-18. Pulling 7 or 8 G here, the blood pumping away from the pilot's brain. He tends to black out if he's not very careful. Two up, two upside down. And the thing about the Blue Angels is that wherever they go, to all of the 75 shows they may do in a season, they're fated. They're always the stars of the show, and people flock from miles around to come and see them. The thing about Miramar is just because the sun's going down doesn't mean to say the show's over. Top Gun fighters get airborne into the sunset. Blue Angels support aircraft, the Fat Albert C-130 takes off with jet assistance. Fantastic. An even plane reheat looks amazing at night. One of the MiGs gets airborne. He's got fireworks to throw away as well. And believe it or not, all of these amazing fireworks are coming from that one MiG. Now a tracker with a different display. And even a microlight gets in on the act. Well, fantastic fireworks at Miramar bring our coverage of the Millennium International Air Shows to an end. From me, Sean Maffitt, a spectacular good night.
Great